The first time Dante Rossetti kissed Claire Whitmore, half the city of Boston was watching. Courtroom 3 had already gone silent before his mouth touched hers. Not the ordinary silence of judges and juries, not the respectful hush that followed objections and verdicts. This was the kind of silence that came after glass shattered, after a scream split the air, after men with guns hidden beneath expensive coats realized they had failed to kill the one man in the room everyone feared. Claire stood frozen beside the prosecution table, her fingers still stained with toner from the evidence files she had copied that morning. A bullet hole smoked in the mahogany paneling behind her. The judge had ducked behind the bench. The jury had been rushed out by marshals. Reporters crouched beneath benches with cameras still rolling because fear, in Boston, never stopped anyone from recording a scandal. And Dante Rossetti stood in front of her like a wall of black wool, blood darkening the shoulder of his tailored coat. Not her blood, his. His hand was wrapped around the back of her neck, firm enough to make the world disappear, careful enough not to hurt her. His eyes were not on her lips. They were scanning the exits, the balconies, the trembling bailiff near the side door, the prosecutor's table where Claire's father stood pale and furious. Then Dante leaned down and kissed her. It was not soft. It was not romantic. It was a claim made in a room full of enemies. A warning. A lie. A protection order written in blood and broadcast to every rival family on the East Coast. When he pulled back, Claire could barely breathe. Dante's voice was low enough that only she could hear it. Now they know you're mine. Claire should have slapped him. She should have screamed. She should have reminded him that she was the daughter of District Attorney Victor Whitmore, the man who had spent 20 years promising Boston he would cleanse the city of men like Dante Rossetti. But all she could see was the blood spreading across Dante's shoulder. All she could hear was what he had told her minutes before the gunfire began. Your father taught you to hate the wrong monster. And across the courtroom, her father looked at Dante with a hatred so intimate it felt almost like fear. 3 weeks earlier, Claire Whitmore still believed justice was simple, not easy, never easy. She had grown up understanding the cost of justice better than most daughters. Her father's security detail had been a regular part of her childhood. So were late-night calls, locked study doors, men in dark suits speaking in lowered voices, and her mother standing at the kitchen window with one hand pressed to her chest, as though the house itself had learned how to threaten her. But Claire believed in the clean version anyway. Evidence, truth, consequences. Her father had built his career on those words. Victor Whitmore had become the face of Boston law enforcement before Claire was old enough to spell arraignment. He appeared on magazine covers with silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of solemn expression that made voters feel safe. He gave speeches about courage. He shook the hands of grieving widows. He stood at podiums after raids and promised that no family, no criminal network, no old money dynasty would ever be above the law. To everyone else, he was District Attorney Whitmore. To Claire, he was Dad, a distant dad, a demanding dad, a man who measured love in discipline and disappointment. But still, the man who had packed her lunch the year after her mother died because he didn't trust anyone else to remember she hated mustard. Claire had inherited his stubbornness and her mother's softer heart. She worked as a legal assistant in the Suffolk County District Attorney's office, not because her father wanted her there, he didn't, but because she wanted to earn a place inside the system she believed in. She organized discovery, prepared witness packets, corrected formatting errors and motions written by exhausted attorneys, and stayed late enough that the cleaning crews knew her coffee order. She lived alone in a small apartment in Beacon Hill, with crooked floors, old radiators, and a window that faced a brick wall. It was a quiet life, carefully built. Morning coffee from the same corner cafe. Walk to work under bare winter branches. 10-hour days in an office that smelled like paper, cold air, and ambition. Home before midnight when possible. She dated no one seriously, trusted slowly, slept lightly, and when her father assigned her to assist with the Rossetti trial, she told herself she was ready. Dante Rossetti was not just a defendant. He was a myth, wearing custom suits. The Rossetti family had ruled the East Coast shadows for 3 generations. Luxury shipping, private security, nightclubs, construction, casinos that were not technically casinos, and charities that made politicians smile for photographs. Every building in Boston seemed to know his name, even if no one spoke it aloud. He was 38, though the press described him like a ghost from an older century. Tall, controlled, devastatingly handsome in the severe way of men who never asked for permission. Black hair combed back, sharp jaw, dark eyes that looked almost bored, even when men begged for mercy. Tattoos climbed from beneath his collar and disappeared beneath his cuffs. Inked saints, knives, Latin phrases, a crowned raven at the base of his throat. The indictment against him was massive: racketeering, bribery, extortion, witness tampering, conspiracy connected to 3 killings nobody could prove had been ordered by him. Claire received 6 locked boxes of evidence on a Monday morning. Her father delivered them himself. He appeared at her cubicle just after 8, flanked by 2 senior prosecutors and a detective Claire had never liked. Detective Harlan Pike always smelled faintly of peppermint gum and expensive aftershave, and his eyes lingered on people like he was already deciding what pressure point would make them break. Victor placed the first file box on her desk. "This case is not like the others," he said. Claire looked up from her coffee. "Good morning to you too." His mouth barely moved. "Claire." That tone made her straighten. Around them, the office seemed to shrink. Attorneys pretended not to listen. Phones rang unanswered. Rain tapped against the windows, turning downtown Boston gray and metallic. Victor leaned closer. "Everything in these boxes stays between you, me, and the prosecution team. No digital copies outside the secure drive. No discussions in hallways. No curiosity beyond what your job requires." Something tightened in Claire's chest. "You assigned me to organize discovery. I assigned you because I trust your discretion." It should have felt like praise. Instead, it felt like a lock clicking shut. "What exactly am I organizing?" Victor's eyes were cold. The end of Dante Rossetti. That afternoon, Claire began with witness statements. By midnight, she had found the first inconsistency. A warehouse guard named Michael Arvin had testified that he saw Dante enter a dockside office at 11:43 p.m. on the night a rival capo disappeared. The surveillance footage supposedly confirmed it. The transcript referenced camera angle 7. But the digital file labeled camera angle 7 began at 11:46 p.m., 3 minutes after the stated sighting, and the metadata showed it had been modified 2 days before being submitted to the court. Claire stared at the screen until her eyes burned. Then she checked the chain of custody form. Signed by Detective Harlan Pike, approved by Victor Whitmore. She told herself there was an explanation. At 1:30 a.m., she found another problem. A witness named Lena Morales had identified Dante from a photo lineup, but in the raw interview notes, Lena had first said the man was blonde. The final affidavit said dark-haired. The correction was initialed not by Lena, but by an assistant prosecutor who had transferred out of the office 6 months earlier and now could not be reached. At 2:05 a.m., Claire discovered a sealed envelope inside box 4 that was not listed on the evidence index. Inside was a photograph of her mother. Claire stopped breathing. The picture had been taken years ago, through a window. Her mother, Evelyn Whitmore, stood outside a courthouse in a camel-colored coat, holding the hand of a little boy Claire did not recognize. Evelyn's face was turned over her shoulder, eyes wide, as if she knew someone was watching. On the back of the photograph, written in black ink, were 3 words: "She found him." Claire sat alone in the evidence room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt her quiet life begin to crack. Her mother had died when Claire was 16. Car accident, according to the reports. Icy road outside Brookline. No witnesses. No foul play. Victor had buried himself in work afterward, and Claire had buried herself in being good. Good grades, good internships, good daughter. No questions that made her father look away. But the photograph in her hand was not a memory. It was evidence. and someone had hidden it in a case against Dante Rossetti. The next morning, she brought the photo to her father. Victor was in his office overlooking downtown, buttoning his suit jacket before a press conference. The walls were covered with framed awards, newspaper covers, and photographs of him beside governors, senators, police chiefs. A portrait of Claire and her mother sat on a side table, the silver frame polished so brightly it looked untouched by grief. Claire closed the door behind her. "Why is Mom in the Rossetti evidence?" Victor's hands stilled. For 1 second, the mask slipped. Then it returned. "What are you talking about?" She placed the photograph on his desk. Victor did not pick it up. He only looked at it, and that scared her more. "Where did you get this?" Box 4, unindexed, hidden under sealed financial records. His eyes lifted to hers. "You went outside your assigned parameters. My assigned parameters are to organize evidence. This is evidence." "No!" His voice sharpened. "That is garbage someone planted to distract you. Who is the boy? Claire. Who is he?" Victor stepped around the desk, suddenly not the public servant, but the father who had once forbidden her from attending a college party because he didn't like the neighborhood. "You will put that photo back where you found it. You will not mention it again, not to anyone, especially not to Rossetti's defense." The name hit like a match in dry air. "Does Dante know about Mom?" Victor's face hardened. "Dante Rossetti destroys women like you." "Women like me? Women who think compassion is the same as judgment." Claire flinched. Victor saw it and softened his voice, which somehow made it worse. "I am protecting you. From him? From what he can make you believe." That should have ended the conversation. It didn't. Because Victor took the photograph, slid it into his jacket pocket, and locked it away, without ever asking why Claire was trembling. The trial began 2 days later. Snow fell over Boston in thin, bitter sheets, frosting the courthouse steps where reporters gathered before dawn. News vans lined the curb. Protesters held signs calling Dante a murderer. Others held signs calling Victor Whitmore a hero. Police barricades sliced the sidewalk into narrow corridors of breath and flashing lights. Claire entered through the employee entrance, her scarf pulled high, her stomach twisted into knots. Inside courtroom 3, Dante Rossetti sat at the defense table like a king forced to attend someone else's coronation. No chains, no visible nerves, no wasted movement. His black suit fit him with brutal perfection. A white shirt open at the collar revealed the dark edge of tattoos across his throat. His hands rested on the table, long fingers still, ink visible across his knuckles. Men around him, lawyers, guards, even marshals, seemed to orbit his silence. Claire tried not to stare. He looked up anyway. Their eyes met across the courtroom. It felt less like being seen and more like being found. Dante's expression did not change, but something in his gaze sharpened. Recognition? Interest? Warning? Claire couldn't tell. She looked away first, furious with herself for feeling anything at all. Her father began opening statements at 9:04 a.m. Victor was magnificent. That was the terrible thing. He made corruption sound impossible. He made certainty sound holy. He paced before the jury with his silver hair and steady voice, painting Dante as a parasite in a designer suit, a man whose empire had poisoned Boston from the docks to City Hall. Claire watched the jury lean in. Then Victor lifted a photo of a dead witness and said, "This city has spent too long being afraid." Dante's jaw tightened. Barely, but Claire saw it. For the next week, the prosecution built its case like a cathedral. Witness after witness. Financial charts. Wiretap transcripts. Surveillance stills. Every day, Claire found another crack. Not enough to collapse the case, just enough to haunt her. A witness who stared at Victor before answering. A timestamp that skipped 11 seconds. A detective who claimed not to remember collecting a piece of evidence he had signed for twice. Then came Lena Morales. She was 24, small, shaking, and dressed in a borrowed blazer. She took the stand on a Thursday morning, with her eyes fixed on the floor. Victor approached gently, almost paternally, and guided her through testimony that placed Dante at a private club the night a councilman vanished. Claire sat behind him with a binder open in her lap. The original interview notes were inside. Lena had never said Dante's name. Claire turned the page slowly. Her fingers went cold. On the stand, Lena whispered, "I saw Mr. Rossetti give the order." Dante looked at her, not with anger, with pity. That look unsettled Claire more than rage would have. During the lunch recess, Claire followed Lena into the women's restroom. She knew it was reckless, improper, dangerous, but the girl had looked like someone walking toward an execution. "Lena," Claire said softly. Lena froze at the sink. Claire held up both hands. "I'm not here to scare you. I just need to ask. You shouldn't talk to me. I know." "No, you don't." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You really don't." Claire stepped closer. "Did someone threaten you?" The bathroom door opened. Detective Harlan Pike entered as if women's restrooms were rooms he had always owned. Lena went white. Claire turned. "You can't be in here." Pike smiled around his gum. "Neither can you, Miss Whitmore. Not with a witness. I was checking on her. Your father know that." The threat was gentle, almost bored. Lena wiped her hands on a paper towel and fled without looking back. Claire tried to pass Pike, but he moved just enough to block her. "You seem like a smart girl," he said. "Smart girls don't dig under houses their fathers built." Claire's heart hammered. "Move." His smile widened. The door opened again. Dante Rossetti stood in the threshold. For one impossible second, no one moved. He should not have been there. Defendants did not wander courthouse hallways without escorts. Mafia bosses on trial did not appear like shadows in women's restrooms. But Dante looked at Pike, and the detective stepped aside. Not because the law required it, because fear did. Dante's gaze flicked over Claire's face, down to Pike's blocking stance, then back again. "Detective," he said quietly, "is there a reason the prosecutor's daughter looks trapped?" Pike's jaw flexed. "This doesn't concern you." Dante entered the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The air changed around him, becoming colder, heavier, impossible to ignore. "She does." 2 words. Claire hated the way they steadied her. Pike left, shoulder brushing Dante's as if trying to prove he wasn't afraid. Dante did not move. Only when the door swung shut did he turn to Claire. "You shouldn't follow frightened witnesses into empty rooms," he said. "You shouldn't be outside custody." A faint smile touched his mouth. "I'm not as contained as your father wants you to believe." "Is that supposed to scare me?" "No." His eyes held hers. "It's supposed to warn you." "About what?" He stepped closer, and Claire's body betrayed her by noticing everything. The clean darkness of his cologne, the red thread at his cuff, the tattoos disappearing beneath his collar, the calm violence beneath his stillness. "Your father taught you to hate the wrong monster." The words struck too deep, because they matched the fear she had been trying not to name. Claire lifted her chin. "Then prove it." Dante watched her for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat. Claire stiffened. He noticed. Something like amusement moved through his eyes, but he withdrew only a folded piece of paper and held it out. "A storage unit in Chelsea," he said. "Your mother rented it under another name." Claire did not take it. "My mother is dead." "I know." The quietness of his voice made her throat ache. "How?" His face closed. "Because I was there the night she tried to save a child your father wanted erased." Before Claire could answer, the bathroom door opened again, and a marshal appeared, panicked and breathless. "Mr. Rossetti, court, now." Dante did not look away from Claire. "Ask yourself why the case against me needs lies if I am already guilty." Then he walked out, leaving Claire with the folded paper in her hand and the terrible sense that her life had just been divided into before and after. That night, Claire went to Chelsea. She told herself she was not betraying her father, she was pursuing truth. There was a difference, even if her hands shook as she drove through industrial streets, slick with freezing rain. The storage facility sat beneath an overpass, its neon sign buzzing blue against the wet dark. Claire wore a black coat, no makeup, and the false confidence of a woman who had watched too many crime dramas and not enough people die. The unit number Dante gave her opened with a key taped beneath the office vending machine. Inside were 12 boxes. Her mother's handwriting covered every label. Claire stood in the doorway, unable to move. Evelyn Whitmore, private case notes, Boston Harbor Initiative, VW/H, Pike, payments, child, unknown male, age approx. 5. Claire opened the child box first. The boy in the photograph had a name, Mateo, no last name. There were medical records, school enrollment forms, a birth certificate with blacked-out parent information, and a photograph of her mother sitting beside the little boy in a hospital room. Mateo had dark curls and solemn eyes. Evelyn was smiling at him with a tenderness that made Claire's chest physically hurt. At the bottom of the box was a letter addressed to Claire. Her hands trembled so badly she almost tore it. My darling Claire, if you are reading this, then I failed to come home with the truth. I need you to understand something before anyone else tells you who to hate. Justice is not clean just because a clean man says the word in public. Your father has made alliances he cannot survive being exposed. Detective Pike is not his servant. He is his knife. There is a child. His name is Mateo. His mother was a witness against men tied to your father, not Dante Rossetti. She was killed before she could testify. I hid Mateo because he saw enough to destroy them all. Dante Rossetti is dangerous. Do not mistake him for innocent. But he is not the man who killed her. He is not the man who ordered my death. Trust evidence. Not blood, not family. Evidence. I love you more than my fear, Mom. Claire sank onto the concrete floor. The storage unit swam around her. Rain thundered overhead. Somewhere outside, tires hissed through puddles. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. I am protecting you from what he can make you believe. No, from what she might find. A noise came from outside. Claire froze. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. More than one person. She shoved the letter into her coat and turned off her flashlight. The unit door exploded inward. Men in masks flooded the space. Claire ran blindly between boxes, knocking files across the floor. A hand grabbed her hair. Pain cracked through her scalp. She elbowed backward and heard a curse. Someone slammed her into a shelving unit. Metal screamed. Boxes crashed. Where is it? A man hissed. Claire tasted blood. I don't know what you mean. He lifted a knife. Then the lights went out. Not dimmed. Cut. The darkness filled with violence. A suppressed gunshot punched the air. Then another. A body hit concrete. Someone shouted. Claire dropped low, crawling beneath a shelf as shapes moved around her. She saw flashes of black coats, heard the wet impact of fists, the scrape of shoes, a man choking on a scream. Then silence. A flashlight beam found her. Claire flinched away. Dante crouched in front of her, his face half-shadowed, his expression unreadable. Are you hurt? She stared at him, shaking. Did you follow me? Yes. Why? Because you were going to come here alone. That's not an answer. It's the only one you get while you're bleeding. He reached for her lip. She jerked back. His hand stopped in midair. The restraint in that pause did something terrible to her. He could have grabbed her. He didn't. He waited, eyes fixed on hers, until she gave the smallest nod. Only then did he touch her. His thumb brushed blood from the corner of her mouth, with such controlled gentleness that Claire almost broke. Around them, his men moved like ghosts, collecting weapons, checking bodies, lifting boxes. She saw one masked attacker groaning on the floor, and looked away. Dante noticed. You came to a graveyard of secrets, he said. Did you expect ghosts to be polite? My father sent them? Dante's eyes darkened. I don't know yet. But you think so? I think Victor Whitmore would burn this city before he let you read what your mother wrote. Claire pulled the letter from her coat and held it against her chest. Dante's gaze dropped to it. For the first time since she had met him, his mask cracked. Pain moved across his face so quickly she might have imagined it. You knew her, Claire whispered. He stood. We need to leave, Dante. His name felt dangerous in her mouth. He looked back. "How did you know my mother?" For a long moment, rain battered the roof above them. Then he said, "She saved my son." The word hit the concrete between them. Son, Mateo. Claire could not speak. Dante's face became cold again, but now she understood coldness differently. Not emptiness, containment. "I can call a ride share," Grace said. Roman's expression did not change. "You can." His jaw tightened. "Mine by vow." Claire's grip tightened on the letter, and my father wanted him erased because he saw something. He saw Pike execute his mother in a parking garage after she agreed to testify. He saw your father arrive 10 minutes later and tell Pike to clean up better next time. The room tilted. Claire shook her head once, not in denial but in pain. "No." Dante stepped closer, and his voice lowered. "I told you. Wrong monster." Outside, tires screeched. Dante turned his head. His men moved instantly. One of them said, "More coming." Dante took Claire's hand. She should have pulled away. She didn't. They ran through freezing rain toward a black SUV waiting beneath the overpass. Gunfire cracked behind them. Dante shoved Claire into the back seat and climbed in after her, shielding her body with his, as bullets struck the vehicle's armored side like hail. The SUV tore into the night. Claire pressed herself against the door, breathing hard. Dante sat inches away, blood on his knuckles, rain in his hair, his face lit by passing streetlights. The city blurred outside. Warehouses, bridges, harbor cranes, the frozen silver edge of Boston under storm clouds. "My father will say you kidnapped me," she said. Dante looked at her. "Did I?" "No." "Say it again." Claire swallowed. "No." His gaze held hers, intense and unreadable. "Good. Because after tonight, everyone will lie about where you belong. I don't belong to anyone." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "You don't." But he looked like he hated the truth. Dante took her to a safe house on the edge of the harbor, a renovated brick building hidden behind a seafood warehouse. Inside, luxury and paranoia lived side by side. Steel doors, velvet furniture, bulletproof glass, fresh flowers in a room with security monitors. A doctor stitched the cut near Claire's temple while Dante stood by the window, speaking Italian into his phone with lethal calm. Claire caught fragments. "Pike, Whitmore, find Mateo, alive." The doctor left her with painkillers and instructions she barely heard. Dante dismissed everyone else with a glance. Then they were alone. A fire burned low in the marble fireplace. Rain streaked the windows. Beyond the glass, the harbor was black and restless. Claire stood beside the couch, arms wrapped around herself. "You should take me home." Dante turned. "Your apartment is being watched." "By who?" "Everyone now." "You don't know that. I know men like your father. I know men like mine. Once a woman becomes leverage, every coward in the city thinks he's a strategist. I'm not leverage." "No," Dante said. "Your evidence. That hurt, because it was true." Claire looked at him, really looked. The blood on his shoulder had dried dark. He had been shot because he followed her into danger. He had touched her like something breakable, then ordered violence without blinking. He was terrifying. He was controlled. He was the first person in days who had told her the truth, even when it destroyed her. "Why didn't you expose my father years ago?" His mouth tightened. "Because your mother hid the proof too well. And because of Mateo? Because whoever found him first would kill him. Do you know where he is now?" "No." That single syllable carried more grief than any confession. Claire sat slowly. "My mother died for him." Dante's eyes moved to the fire. "She died because she still believed people could choose courage at the last second. And you don't. I believe people choose fear, then they call it loyalty. What do you choose?" He looked at her. The room changed. Not visibly. Nothing moved. But the distance between them became charged with something neither justice nor fear could name. "Control," he said. Claire's heart beat too hard. "That sounds lonely." A faint, humorless smile. "It is safer than need." "You don't need anyone?" Dante stepped closer. Slowly, like he was giving her time to move away. She didn't. His gaze lowered to the pulse at her throat, then returned to her eyes. I have needed one person in my life. He disappeared because everyone around him wanted power. Mateo. Yes. The fire cracked. Claire whispered. I can help you find him. No. You don't get to decide that. Yes, he said, voice suddenly cold. I do, she stood. I am not one of your soldiers. No. You're Victor Whitmore's daughter with a target on her back and a conscience he failed to kill. And you think locking me in a beautiful prison makes you better than him? Dante's eyes flashed. For a second, the room felt too small for his anger. Then he leaned close enough that Claire felt the warmth of him, close enough that every instinct in her body argued with every principle in her mind. If I wanted a prison, he said softly, you would not see the locks. Her breath caught. He regretted the words immediately. She saw it. Not because he apologized. Men like Dante did not reach apology easily, but because he stepped back, putting space between them, like a punishment he imposed on himself. I will have my driver take you wherever you want in the morning, he said. And tonight? Tonight, if you are wise, you will sleep. Claire laughed once, bitter and tired. I don't feel wise. Dante moved toward the door. She stopped him with one question. Why did you look at my mother's letter like that? His hand rested on the doorknob. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, without turning, he answered, because she wrote one to me too. He left before Claire could ask what it said. By morning, her face was everywhere. Not her bruised face, not the storage unit, not the truth. The kiss. Someone had leaked a still from courthouse security footage taken during a recess days earlier. Dante, standing close to her outside the restroom. By noon, gossip accounts had paired it with images of Claire entering Dante's SUV after the attack at the storage unit. Headlines sharpened themselves into knives. District Attorney's daughter linked to Mafia Boss. Whitmore scandal rocks Rossetti trial. Prosecutor's daughter, or mob princess. Claire stood in Dante's safe-house kitchen, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, watching her own life burn on 3 different news channels. Her phone had 117 missed calls, most from her father. One voicemail from Victor played automatically when her shaking thumb slipped. Claire, come home now. Whatever Rossetti told you is manipulation. He has done this before. He isolates. He corrupts. He makes women think danger is devotion. Call me before you ruin your life. The message ended. Dante stood across the kitchen, silent. Claire looked up. Did you? Did I what? Make women think danger is devotion. His expression did not soften. I have made people think many things to survive. That's not an answer. It is the honest one. She hated that honesty could feel safer than comfort. A knock sounded at the door. One of Dante's men entered. Boss, the DA is downstairs. Claire's stomach dropped. Dante's face became unreadable. Alone? With federal marshals and news cameras outside the gate, Victor Whitmore did not storm into the safe house. He entered like a man walking into court, every inch controlled, his dark overcoat dusted with snow. His eyes found Claire first, scanning her bruises. For a heartbeat, fatherhood broke through. Then he saw Dante standing beside her, and hatred returned. Step away from my daughter. Dante did not move. She can step where she wants. Victor's gaze cut to Claire. We're leaving. Claire's mouth went dry. I know about Mateo. Victor's face changed so slightly no one else might have noticed. Dante did. The room became deadly still. Victor removed his gloves slowly. You know a story. I know Mom hid him. Your mother was unstable near the end. Claire felt the words like a slap. Dante's voice dropped. Careful. Victor ignored him. She became obsessed with conspiracy theories. She endangered you. I protected this family from her delusions. Claire stared at him. All her life, her mother had been preserved in silence, sainted through absence, loved in photographs. Now, cornered, Victor was willing to make her sound mad. You told me she died on an icy road. She did. Was Pike there? Victor's jaw tightened. There it was, a silence too small to hide inside. Claire whispered, Dad. Victor stepped closer. You are tired. You are injured. This man has been feeding you poison. Answer me." His eyes hardened. "You do not question me in front of him." Dante moved so fast, Claire barely saw it. One moment, he was by the counter. The next, he stood between them, not touching Victor, not threatening with hands, but filling the room with the kind of danger that made even security cameras seem to hold their breath. "She questions whoever she wants," Victor laughed softly. "And now you defend her honor? How sentimental." Dante's face remained calm. "No, I defend her right to hate you with accurate information." Victor's eyes flickered. Then he smiled at Claire, and the smile frightened her because it was almost tender. "Come home, Claire. I can still fix this." Fix. Not explain. Not apologize. Fix. She saw her father then, not as a villain from a story, not as the monster Dante wanted her to see, but as something worse. A man who believed love gave him ownership over truth. "No," she said. Victor went very still. Claire's voice shook, but it did not break. "I'm staying until I know what happened to Mom." Something died in his expression. When Victor spoke again, his voice was quiet. "Then you have chosen your side." Claire had imagined those words would feel like a door slamming. Instead, they felt like falling through ice. Victor turned to Dante. "You think kissing her in public will protect her?" Claire blinked. Dante's eyes narrowed. Victor smiled. "You haven't done it yet." His gaze slid to Claire. "But you will. That is how men like you think. You claim women when you cannot save them." Dante's silence changed. Claire understood too late. The courthouse kiss had not happened yet, but her father had already imagined it, or planned the circumstances that would force it. Dante stepped closer to Victor. "What did you set in motion?" Victor put his gloves back on. "Court resumes Monday," he said. "Bring her if you trust your own protection." He walked out into the snow. That night, Dante sat outside Claire's bedroom door. Not inside, not touching, not demanding. Outside. Claire discovered him at 2:17 a.m., when nightmares drove her from the bed. She opened the door and found him seated in a chair at the end of the hallway. Jacket removed, sleeves rolled up, tattoos visible along his forearms. A gun rested on the table beside him, untouched but close. His eyes lifted immediately. "You don't sleep?" she asked. "Not when someone plans to take what I'm guarding." The words moved through her before she could stop them. "I'm not yours." Dante looked at her with a tiredness that felt almost human. "I know. You keep saying things like that, then acting like you don't. I act like men are hunting you. They're hunting evidence. You are evidence with a heartbeat." Claire leaned against the doorframe. The hall was dim, lit by a single amber lamp. Outside, Boston snow fell in soft violence against the windows. For the first time since childhood, she felt very young and very old at once. "Did my mother's letter to you tell you where Mateo was?" "No." "What did it say?" Dante's gaze dropped. Claire expected him to refuse. Instead, he reached into his vest and removed a folded piece of paper, worn soft from years of being handled. He did not give it to her immediately. The hesitation was intimate. Then he held it out. Claire unfolded it carefully. "Dante, if you are reading this, then I failed you. Mateo is alive. I will not write where. I know what you are, and I know what men say you have done. But I have seen what you become when that child is afraid, and I believe there is still one room inside you that has not gone dark. Do not let revenge make you careless. Do not let grief make you cruel. And if my daughter ever finds herself standing between your world and Victor's, do not use her. Protect her, even if she hates you for it. Evelyn." Claire looked up through tears she refused to let fall. Dante's face was turned slightly away, jaw tight. "You carried this for 12 years, she said. "Yes. Why? Because no one else ever asked me to be better, and believed I might listen." The answer broke something between them. Not the wall, a crack in it. Claire stepped into the hallway. "Dante." He looked at her. The air shifted again, slow and dangerous. She should have gone back inside. She should have closed the door. She should have remembered who he was and what he had done, and what wanting comfort from a man like him could cost. Instead, she walked closer. He stood immediately, not touching her, every muscle controlled. "I'm scared," she admitted. His expression darkened, not with satisfaction, but fury at the world that had made her say it. "I know. I don't know who to trust." "Good," she laughed softly, painfully. "That's comforting. Trust should be expensive. And what would trusting you cost?" Dante's eyes held hers. Everything safe. Her breath caught. He reached toward her, then stopped, with his hand inches from her cheek. A man used to taking. A man refusing himself. That restraint ruined her more than his touch could have. Claire closed the distance and put her cheek against his palm. Dante went completely still. His hand curved around her face with a care that felt almost reverent. His thumb brushed beneath her eye once. That was all. No kiss, no claim, no confession. But when Claire went back into the bedroom, her skin remembered him like a secret. Monday arrived under a sky the color of steel. Claire returned to court beside Dante Rossetti. The world lost its mind. Reporters screamed her name. Cameras flashed so violently the courthouse steps looked stormlit. Victor stood near the entrance, surrounded by marshals, his expression carved from stone. Across the street, black SUVs idled in the snow. Some belonged to Dante, some did not. Claire wore a navy dress, her mother's pearl earrings, and a bruise fading beneath careful makeup. Dante walked half a step behind her, not because he followed, but because he could shield her faster from that angle. "Keep your eyes forward," he murmured. "I know how to walk. I know. Do it like you're not afraid." "I am afraid." His voice lowered. "Then make them wonder who taught fear to behave." She hated that the word steadied her. Inside courtroom 3, every conversation died. The prosecutor's daughter entered beside the accused. Victor's mouth tightened. Pike leaned against the wall near the witness entrance, chewing gum slowly. Claire took her seat behind the prosecution table, not beside Dante. The choice was deliberate. She would not let either man own the story. Victor opened with a motion to remove her from the courtroom as a compromised member of staff. Dante's lawyer objected. The judge looked like he wanted to retire immediately. Reporters whispered. Claire sat still, feeling every eye turn her into a headline. Then the next witness was called, Detective Pike. He walked to the stand in a charcoal suit, sworn in with a hand that had probably planted more evidence than Claire had ever filed. Victor guided him through the surveillance footage from the docks, the altered camera angle, the missing 3 minutes. Claire watched Dante. His face revealed nothing, but his hand rested on the table, fingers slowly curling. Pike lied beautifully, too beautifully. During cross-examination, Dante's lawyer began pressing on the metadata. Pike deflected. The judge frowned. Victor objected. The tension in the courtroom sharpened. Then Claire noticed the bailiff near the side door. Not the regular bailiff, a substitute. His hand slipped beneath his jacket. Claire saw the gun before anyone else did. Everything happened at once. She stood. Gun. The bailiff fired. The bullet was meant for Dante, but Claire was in the line of sight. Dante moved like violence made flesh. He slammed into her, taking her down behind the prosecution table as the second shot tore through his shoulder. Screams erupted. Marshals drew weapons. Pike lunged from the stand, not toward the shooter, but toward the side exit. Victor ducked behind the table, shouting orders no one obeyed. Dante covered Claire's body with his own. His blood dripped onto her collarbone. "Stay down," he ordered. "Dante, you're hit. Stay down." Gunfire cracked again. One of Dante's men tackled the shooter near the jury box. Marshals swarmed. Cameras flashed from beneath benches. The courtroom became chaos, terror, smoke, shattered glass. Then Dante looked toward the gallery. Claire followed his gaze. 3 men in the back row were not panicking. They were watching her. Not Dante. Her. Rival family men. She knew without knowing how. Dante understood before she did. If the city saw her as merely Victor's rebellious daughter, she was leverage. If the rival families believed she had evidence, she was dead. If they believed Dante cared, she was bait. But if they believed Dante had claimed her publicly, killing her would mean declaring war on him. His hand slid to the back of her neck. Claire's eyes widened. "No," she whispered. His gaze locked with hers. "I'm sorry." Then he kissed her in open court. This time, she understood exactly what it was. A shield, a scandal, a prison door, and a bulletproof vest. His mouth was warm, firm, brief. Not a lover's indulgence, a battlefield decision. But Claire's body did not understand strategy. It only knew his blood was on her skin. His hand trembled once against her neck, and the most dangerous man in Boston had just made himself vulnerable in front of every enemy to keep her alive. When he pulled back, the cameras were still flashing. Everyone froze. Victor rose slowly from behind the table, face white with fury. Dante did not look at him. He looked at the men in the back row and smiled coldly. The message was clear. Touch her, and I burn your bloodline down. By sunset, the entire country had seen the kiss. By midnight, Claire's apartment had been firebombed. She watched the flames on Dante's phone from the back of an armored SUV, numb as firefighters poured water into the place where her quiet life had once existed. Her books, her mother's mug, the blue sweater she wore on Sundays, the plant she kept forgetting to water but somehow never killed. Gone. Dante sat beside her, one arm in a sling, face pale from blood loss and rage. "I should have let you take me somewhere else," she whispered. His voice was rough. "This is not your fault. Everything around me is burning. No." He looked at the screen, eyes merciless. "Everyone who touches you is showing me where to strike." She turned to him. "That's what scares me." He looked back. For once, he did not pretend not to understand. The safe house was no longer safe. Dante moved her to a mansion on the North Shore, hidden behind iron gates and winter trees bent under snow. It overlooked a storm-black stretch of Atlantic, all stone terraces, high windows, candlelit rooms, and security so tight even the wind seemed screened before entering. Forced proximity became less a trope than a siege. Claire slept in a bedroom with ocean views and 3 locks. Dante slept rarely, often in the library below, where screens showed camera feeds from the gates, harbor, courthouse, her father's office, and places Claire did not recognize. They fought every day. About her freedom, about his violence, about whether evidence mattered in a world where men like Victor could alter it. About the kiss. "You should have warned me," Claire said one night, standing in the candlelit library while waves crashed beyond the windows. Dante poured whiskey he did not drink. "There wasn't time. There was time to say my name before you kissed me." His jaw tightened. "You would have said no." "Yes. And then you might be dead." The words landed brutally. Claire folded her arms. "So my consent was less important than your strategy." Dante went still. For a long moment, only the storm spoke. Then he set the glass down untouched. "Yes." The honesty hurt. Then he added, quieter, "And I will carry that." Claire looked at him. No excuse, no seduction, no attempt to make it romantic. Just the ugly truth between them. "I hate you for that," she said. "I know. I also know why you did it. That does not absolve me." "No," she whispered. "It doesn't." He nodded once, accepting the sentence. That should have pushed them apart. Instead, it made the space between them more honest. The next day, Claire found the wall. It was hidden behind a locked door in Dante's private study. She should not have picked the lock with a paperclip and stubbornness. But she was Victor Whitmore's daughter and Evelyn Whitmore's child, and secrets had begun to feel like doors insulting her. The room inside was dark except for a single desk lamp. Photographs covered one wall. Claire's breath stopped. Not surveillance trophies. Not obsession in the grotesque sense the tabloids would have loved. A timeline. Her mother outside the courthouse. Mateo as a child in different cities, face partially hidden. Detective Pike meeting men in parking garages. Victor accepting envelopes from a man outside a private club. Claire leaving college years ago. Claire entering the DA's office. Claire at her mother's grave. There were hundreds of photos, documents, red strings, notes. At the center was Evelyn Whitmore, and beside her, a recent blurry image of a young man with dark curls walking out of a chapel in Vermont. Mateo. Claire heard the door open behind her. She did not turn. "How long have you been watching me?" Dante's silence was answer enough. She turned slowly. "How long?" His face was closed, but his eyes were tired. "Since you applied to the DA's office." "Years." "Yes." Rage rose fast enough to make her shake. "You had people follow me? To make sure Victor didn't decide you were becoming too much like your mother." "That is not protection. That is surveillance." "It was both." "No," she pointed to the wall. "That is what men like you do. You make fear look like devotion. My father does it with law. You do it with guards and cameras." Dante absorbed it without flinching. "You're right," he said. She faltered. "I am not a good man, Claire. I know that." "No." He stepped closer, but not too close. "You know what you need to know, so you can still look at me. There are rooms inside me you would hate. Then why show me this? Because you found it. That's not the same as honesty." His eyes sharpened with pain. "No, it's not." She turned back to the wall, tears burning. "Did you ever think of speaking to me like a person? I thought if I came near you, I would bring death with me. You did." The words landed like a wound. Dante's face did not change, but something in him recoiled. Claire walked past him. He did not stop her. That night, he stood outside in the storm for 3 hours. Claire watched from the bedroom window despite herself. Dante stood near the black iron gates in his coat, rain soaking his hair, one hand in his pocket, the other hanging at his side. His men kept their distance. He looked less like a king than a man exiled from the only room where warmth existed. She hated him. She feared him. She understood him. That was the most dangerous part. At 3 a.m., she went downstairs with a towel and found him in the entry hall, dripping rain onto marble. "You're bleeding through your bandage," she said. He looked at her like he had not expected mercy. "I'll change it." "You don't have to." "I know." In the quiet of the library, she unwrapped the bandage from his shoulder. The bullet wound was ugly, bruised, still healing. His tattoos disappeared beneath the edge of the gauze, ink and injury crossing like history. Dante sat motionless while she worked. "Did you kill my mother?" Claire asked. His eyes lifted. "No." "Did you love her?" The question surprised them both. Dante looked toward the fire. "No, not that way." "But you cared. She was brave in a city that feeds on brave women." Claire pressed fresh gauze to his skin. "And me?" His gaze returned to her. The room became too quiet. "You," he said, "are becoming a problem I no longer know how to survive." Her hand stilled against his shoulder. That was not a confession. It was more frightening, a near confession with teeth. Before either of them could move, Dante's phone rang. He answered, listened, and went utterly cold. "What is it?" Claire asked. His eyes found hers. "We found Mateo." Mateo was 21 now, living under the name Matthew Vale in a small town in Vermont, working at a church-run shelter and studying social work. Evelyn had hidden him with a retired nun who had once been her college roommate. For 12 years, Dante's men had searched the wrong places because Evelyn had understood something no criminal strategist had. The safest hiding place was not where money could reach. It was where no one important thought to look. They drove north before dawn in a convoy of black SUVs. Snow thickened across the highway. Claire sat beside Dante in the back seat, wrapped in silence. Between them lay all the things they had not forgiven and could not forget. When they reached the church, the world was white and still. Mateo stood on the steps beneath a stone arch, taller than Claire expected, with Dante's solemn eyes and the wary posture of someone who had learned early that safety was temporary. Dante stepped out of the SUV. For the first time since Claire had met him, he looked afraid. Mateo stared at him. Neither moved. Then Dante said, in a voice stripped of power, "I promised your mother I would find you." Mateo's face broke. Not completely, just enough. "You're too late," he said. Dante flinched as if struck. Claire's chest tightened. Mateo looked at her. "Are you Claire?" She nodded. "Your mother used to read me stories." Claire covered her mouth. Mateo reached into his coat and removed a small drive on a chain. "She said if anyone ever came asking about Boston, I should give this to you." "Not him, you." Dante looked at the drive, then at Claire. No anger, no demand, only acceptance. Claire took it. Inside the church, beneath stained glass and candlelight, Mateo told them what he remembered. His mother meeting Victor. Pike shouting. A gunshot. Evelyn pulling him into her car. A man in a black coat arriving too late. Dante, younger, blood on his hands from another fight. Screaming his sister's name in the parking garage. Mateo remembered Victor's voice. "Clean it up." He remembered Pike laughing. He remembered Evelyn telling him to close his eyes and run when she said run. The drive contained video. Not perfect, not cinematic. Security footage copied from the parking garage before Pike altered the official files. Grainy, dark, but clear enough. Victor Whitmore stood beside Harlan Pike over the body of Mateo's mother. Claire watched her father point at the camera and say, "Find out who has access. Tonight." Then Evelyn's voice, barely audible. "I already do." The video cut off as she ran. Claire felt the world collapse and rearrange itself around the truth. Dante stood behind her, close enough to steady her, not touching, because he knew this grief had to choose its own shape. Mateo looked at him. "If I testify, they'll kill me." Dante's answer was immediate. "Then I will put the city between you and them." Claire turned. "No." Both men looked at her. "No more hiding behind fear. No more private wars. We do this with evidence." Dante's mouth tightened. "Victor controls the evidence." "Not all of it." "Claire." She stepped closer to him. "My mother died trusting evidence. If we answer with only blood, my father wins twice. He proves everyone is dirty. He makes justice impossible." Dante stared at her. "You still believe in it," he said. "Yes. After everything?" "Especially after everything." His eyes moved over her face with something like wonder and dread. "That faith will get you killed. Then protect me while I use it." The words hung between them. Not surrender, not romance. A vow sharpened into a challenge. Dante's expression changed slowly. Fascination. Denial. Fear. Then something deeper. "As you wish," he said. Victor made his move before they returned to Boston. News broke that Claire Whitmore had conspired with Dante Rossetti to fabricate evidence, compromise witnesses, and obstruct the biggest organized crime trial in Massachusetts history. A warrant was drafted, not signed yet, but close enough to leak. Her father stood at a podium with grief in his eyes and told the cameras his daughter was being manipulated by a predator. "I love my daughter," Victor said, voice breaking perfectly, "and I will save her, even from herself." Claire watched the press conference from Dante's North Shore mansion. Then she vomited in the guest bathroom. Not because she was weak, because betrayal had a body, and hers could not hold it all at once. Dante found her sitting on the cold tile floor, arms around her knees. He crouched in the doorway. "Go away," she whispered. "No. I don't want you to see me like this. I have seen men die with less courage than you are showing on this floor." She laughed through tears. "That is such a terrible compliment. I'm not practiced at gentle ones." "No, you're not." He sat beside her on the floor, expensive suit and all, his back against the bathtub. He did not touch her. After a while, Claire rested her head against his shoulder. Dante stopped breathing for a second. Then he turned his face slightly toward her hair. "My father is going to destroy me," she said. "No. He knows every fear I have. So do I." She lifted her head. Dante's eyes were dark, haunted, and brutally honest. "The difference is, I would rather cut off my own hand than use them." Claire believed him. That was the moment she knew she was in trouble. Not because he was safe, because he was not. And still, some wounded part of her trusted the way he handled her brokenness more than her father had handled her loyalty. The final confrontation began at a gala. Victor Whitmore hosted a charity event at the Boston Public Library to raise money for witness protection reform, a grotesque irony so bold it felt almost elegant. Senators, judges, Donors, police commissioners, and half the city's press attended beneath vaulted ceilings and murals, glowing gold in the chandelier light. Claire arrived on Dante's arm in a black dress that made the entire room stop speaking. Dante wore a tuxedo, his tattoos visible above the collar, his expression calm enough to terrify. Around them, bodyguards blended with waiters. Reporters lifted cameras. Victor turned from a donor and saw his daughter walking beside the man he had built a career condemning. For one heartbeat, he looked wounded. Then he looked proud of how well she had learned to make an entrance. "You shouldn't have come," he said when they reached him. Claire's hand rested lightly on Dante's arm. "You invited the cameras." Victor smiled. "And you brought a criminal." "I brought a witness." His eyes sharpened. Across the room, Mateo stepped from behind a marble column with Dante's lawyer and 2 federal agents Claire had contacted through her mother's old files. Agents Victor had never controlled, because they had spent years investigating corruption inside state prosecutions. Victor's smile faded. The gala shifted around them, unaware of the blade being drawn in silence. Claire removed a small drive from her clutch. "Mom says hello." Victor's face drained of color. Dante stood still beside her, but Claire felt the violence in him begging for permission. Not for himself, for her. Because her hands were shaking. Because Victor had made her childhood into camouflage for his crimes. Because grief deserved blood, and Dante knew exactly where to spill it. Claire tightened her fingers around his arm. Not yet. He obeyed. Victor leaned close, voice low. "You have no idea what you are doing." "Yes," Claire said, "I do. You think Rossetti loves you? Men like him possess. They don't love." Dante's jaw tightened. Claire looked at her father. "And men like you prosecute criminals in public while hiring them in private." Victor's eyes went flat. There he was. No more father. No more public servant. Just the man beneath. "You are your mother's daughter," he said. "That is not a compliment." Claire smiled through the pain. "It's the only inheritance I want." Then the lights went out. For 1 second, the library plunged into darkness. Then gunfire erupted. Screams filled the grand hall. Glass shattered overhead. Guests ran blindly between tables. Emergency lights flashed red against marble columns. Claire felt Dante's arm lock around her waist as he dragged her behind a stone pedestal. "Pike," he said. Detective Pike appeared near the east corridor, gun in hand, moving toward Mateo. Victor had not come to argue. He had come to erase the last witness. Dante looked at Claire once. The question was silent. Stay or run? Claire answered by pulling the drive from her clutch and shoving it into the hands of a terrified reporter crouched behind the pedestal. "Live stream it," she said. "Now." The reporter stared. Claire grabbed his collar. "Now." Dante smiled for half a second, fierce and proud. Then he moved. He crossed the hall through chaos like a nightmare given purpose. Pike fired. Dante took cover behind a marble statue, returned fire low, not wild, not careless. His men intercepted 2 attackers near the stairwell. Mateo was pulled behind federal agents. Victor tried to disappear toward a service exit. Claire saw him, her father, leaving, not searching for her, not protecting witnesses, saving himself. Something cold and clear settled in her chest. She ran after him. "Claire!" Dante roared. But she was already moving through smoke and shattered glass, down a corridor lined with old portraits and emergency lights. Victor was ahead, limping slightly, phone pressed to his ear. "Dad!" He stopped. Slowly, he turned. For a moment, in the red light, he looked older than she had ever seen him. "Don't do this," he said. Claire laughed, breathless and devastated. "You don't get to say that. I did everything for this city. You killed Mom. I loved your mother. No, you loved control." His face twisted. She was going to destroy everything. She was going to tell the truth. She was going to hand Boston to Rossetti. Claire shook her head, tears falling now. "You still don't understand. She wasn't saving Dante. She was saving a child." Victor's expression flickered. Behind him, a side door opened. Pike stepped in, gun raised. Claire froze. Victor saw her eyes move and understood too late. Pike was not aiming at Claire. He was aiming at Victor. Loose ends. The truth reached Victor's face at the exact moment Dante appeared behind Claire. He fired once. Pike's gun flew from his hand as blood sprayed from his wrist. Dante crossed the distance in 2 strides and slammed Pike into the wall. With such force, a portrait crashed to the floor. Pike grabbed a knife from his boot. Dante caught his wrist. Bone cracked. Pike gasped. Claire looked away, only when Pike hit the floor unconscious. Victor stared at Dante, then at Claire. Dante stepped between them, breathing hard, blood on his shirt from a reopened wound, eyes black with controlled rage. "Give me one reason," Dante said softly. Victor lifted his chin. "Because she will never forgive you if you kill me." The worst part was that he was right. Dante's hand flexed at his side. Claire stepped around him. Victor looked at her with desperate calculation. "Claire, I am your father." She looked at the man who had raised her, lied to her, buried her mother, framed a monster because the truth made himself worse. "Yes," she whispered. "That's why you should have loved me better." Federal agents flooded the corridor. Victor Whitmore was arrested beneath the portraits of dead judges, while the live stream of his crimes spread across every screen in America. Dante did not touch Claire until Victor was gone. Then her knees gave out. He caught her before she hit the floor. Not dramatically, not for cameras. Quietly, as if saving her from falling was the only law he recognized. The trial collapsed within 48 hours. Charges against Dante tied to fabricated evidence were dismissed. Other investigations remained, because Dante was still Dante, and Claire refused to pretend love could bleach blood from a man's history. But Victor's empire shattered. Pike turned on half the city before his arraignment. Judges resigned. Prosecutors were suspended. Witnesses came forward. Mateo entered federal protection under his own terms, not as a hidden child, but as a man choosing testimony. Claire resigned from the DA's office. The press called her brave, foolish, corrupted, heroic, unstable, seductive, manipulated, powerful, whatever word sold best that hour. She stopped reading. For 3 weeks, she stayed at the North Shore mansion, while Boston rebuilt its lies into new stories. Dante kept his distance. That was the punishment neither of them expected. He protected her through men, gates, armored cars, legal teams, and silence. But he did not come to her bedroom door, did not stand too close, did not reach for her face, did not call her his. Claire lasted 17 days before she found him in the abandoned chapel at the edge of his estate. It was small, old, built of stone, with broken stained glass and candles burning before a statue of Mary. Snow fell through a hole in the roof, melting before it touched the flames. Dante stood near the altar in a black coat, head bowed, one hand braced against the wood. He looked like a man confessing to a God he did not believe would answer. "You're avoiding me," Claire said. He did not turn. "I'm giving you freedom. That's not the same thing. It is the closest I know how to come." She walked down the aisle slowly. "Do you think I stayed because I had nowhere else to go?" Dante's shoulders tightened. "You lost your apartment. I can rent another apartment. You lost your father. I found my mother." He turned, then. His face was raw in the candlelight, stripped of the courtroom coldness, the mafia composure, the dangerous elegance that made rooms bow before him. "I put you in danger," he said. "My father put me in danger. I kissed you without permission. Yes. I watched you for years. Yes. I have killed men, Claire. I know." His voice lowered. "Then why are you here?" She stopped in front of him, because it was the question that mattered. Not whether he was good, not whether she was foolish, not whether the world would understand. "I'm here because you tell me the truth, even when it makes you look unforgivable," she said. "Because you could have used my grief, and you didn't. Because when I asked you to protect me while I used evidence, you did. Because you are dangerous, Dante, but you are not false." His eyes moved over her face, like he was trying to memorize courage before it disappeared. And because, Claire whispered, when everything in my life was a lie, you were the only thing that felt real. Dante closed his eyes. Pain crossed his face. You should want someone easier. I do. That startled a laugh from him, quiet and broken. Claire stepped closer. But I love you. The chapel seemed to hold its breath. Dante looked at her as if the words had wounded him. No, he said softly. Claire blinked. No, you don't say that to a man like me unless you understand what it will do. What will it do? His restraint snapped. Not violently, completely. He reached for her face with both hands, stopping just before he touched her, still asking without words, even now, after everything. Claire answered by covering his hands with hers and pulling them to her cheeks. Dante bowed his forehead to hers. It will make me yours in ways I cannot undo, he whispered. It will make every room without you unlivable. It will make your safety the first law of my world. It will make me worse to anyone who threatens you. And better to me? His thumbs brushed her tears. To you, he said, voice breaking. I will spend the rest of my life trying. This time, when he kissed her, the world was not watching. No cameras, no gunfire, no strategy, no scandal. Only candlelight, snow, and the slow surrender of a man who had mistaken control for survival until a prosecutor's daughter walked into court with evidence in her hands and fear behaving behind her eyes. Claire kissed him back because she chose to, because darkness was not the same as dishonesty. Because love, real love, did not make monsters disappear. It forced them to kneel before what they could not bear to lose. Months later, Boston saw them together again. Not in court, not in scandal. At the harbor, just before dawn, where the city looked almost innocent under a pale gold sky. Claire stood beside Dante on the deck of a restored ferry converted into a legal aid foundation funded anonymously through companies no one could quite trace. Its mission was witness protection reform, wrongful conviction review, and emergency relocation for children caught between criminal power and public corruption. The press hated that they could not decide whether it was redemption or strategy. Claire knew it was both. Dante stood behind her, black coat open against the cold, tattoos visible at his throat, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Still possessive, still dangerous, still a man the city feared. But when Claire turned to him, his expression changed in the smallest way. The world would never see it. That was hers. Mateo arrived with 2 federal agents and a shy smile. He hugged Claire first, then Dante. The embrace between the 2 men was stiff, painful, unfinished, and real. Across the harbor, sunlight touched the courthouse dome. Claire looked at it without trembling. Her father awaited trial in a federal facility outside the city. She had not visited yet. Maybe one day, maybe never. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not a duty owed to blood. It was a door the wounded could open only if their own hands were ready. Dante watched her watching the city. Do you miss it? He asked. The office? The life before me. Claire considered lying, then smiled faintly. Sometimes. His jaw tightened, but he accepted it. She loved that he accepted truth, even when it hurt him. Then she reached for his hand. Dante looked down as her fingers threaded through his tattooed ones. You were not the beginning of my danger, she said. You were the first person who stopped pretending it wasn't there. His hand closed around hers. The harbor wind lifted her hair. Behind them, the foundation staff prepared for the opening ceremony. Ahead of them, Boston glittered with secrets, ambition, grief, and second chances. Dante leaned close. His voice meant only for her. Tell me what you want, Claire. She looked at the city that had taken her mother, exposed her father, and given her a love sharp enough to cut through every lie. I want the truth, she said. I want the children safe. I want your world to stop swallowing innocent people. Dante's mouth curved slightly. Ambitious. You asked. I did. And you? His eyes settled on hers with that dark, devastating focus that had once terrified her across a courtroom. I want one ordinary morning with you, he said. Then another. Then enough of them that I stop waiting for punishment." Claire's heart softened. She rose on her toes and kissed him in the harbor light. This time, a few cameras captured it from a distance. This time, nobody froze. Boston had already learned what the kiss meant. Not ownership, not scandal, not corruption. Protection, yes. Danger, always. But also choice. A woman who had lost the clean version of justice and built a braver one from its ruins. A mafia boss who remained feared by the world, but had learned to be gentle with the one person who made him afraid of his own darkness. And as the sun rose over the city, Dante Rossetti held Claire Whitmore's hand like it was the only verdict that had ever mattered. Behind them, the harbor bells rang. Ahead of them, another war was surely coming. In Boston, men like Dante did not get peaceful endings. But for one morning, with snow melting on black coats and gold light spilling across the water, the prosecutor's daughter smiled beside the mafia boss everyone had warned her to hate. And Dante, who had once kissed her in open court to save her life, bent his head and whispered the vow that made her believe the next story had already begun. "Let them come, Claire. This time, they face us together."